Let us discuss the concept of holism. When we were students, we used to wonder why holism as a concept, while it means whole or total or entirety, it doesn't have a W. That means WHOLE was not there. It's HOLE, whole. So you know what whole means. But holism as a concept of entirety, the term itself borrows from the Greek word holos, which starts with a W. So you know why holism is HOLE. Or when we say that anthropology is holistic in spirit, we use HOLE and not WHOLE. Now, anthropologists, if we look at the history of the discipline of anthropology, we will see that holism or the anthropological holistic spirit has something to do with its history, because anthropology as a discipline started primarily part of the colonial pursuit of knowing the others or the culture of the others. So basically, anthropologists were employed to understand and explore and give concrete knowledge about the everydayness or the everyday life of the others. Now, the word everydayness or the word everyday life was not there, not in practice, not in standard practice like today's world. But what anthropologists used to do is they used to explore, they used to document, they used to understand, they used to analyze how the other used to live. The other means those who doesn't belong to the colonizers, those who were colonized. Now, in anthropological sense of the term, holism is based primarily on two dimensions. Now, one of the dimensions we all know. It is linked with the discipline of anthropology, which has a multidisciplinary approach from the very beginning of the discipline, because it attempts to understand human beings from every possible angles. Now, for our convenience, for the convenience of the anthropologists, we have divided anthropology into 3 or 4 branches. For example, we have a biological anthropology, we have prehistoric archaeological anthropology, we have social cultural anthropology, and we also have linguistic anthropology. Now, human beings, if we kind of club up all 4 dimensions together, we can say that we are studying human beings from a very multiple dimensions, from every possible dimensions, because we, on the one hand, we are studying biology, on the other hand, we are studying history of the human beings, and another side we are actually exploring the social cultural dimensions of human beings. Now, how holism developed is interesting, because this is only very small part of the holistic spirit of anthropology, because anthropological spirit, which is supposed to be holistic, is rooted to something else, is not entirely rooted with the 4-dimensional approach that has become the standard practice of anthropologists throughout the world. It has something to do with Frabua, Malinowski, even linked with the very definition of E.B. Tylor. We know that E.B. Tylor defined culture memorably. He said that culture is a complex whole. The word whole is very much there with Tylor's definition. So, Frabua was one of the first anthropologists who suggested that anthropology should try to explore others by doing extensive fieldwork. Now, the part of the fieldwork, the way we do fieldwork today, we owe a lot to Malinowski. It has something to do with some historical accidents as well. Malinowski went to do fieldwork at Robben Island. Then he stuck there because First World War came. And then he wrote to his supervisor that whether I should come back or not. His supervisor said that no, you stay back, because it's not a good idea to come back. So he stayed. And when he stayed, he had nothing to do. He had training in natural sciences as well as philosophy. But At that point of time he had nothing to do, so he started writing a diary. He started documenting meticulously about the lifeways of Trobriand islanders. And when he came back and he started writing his thesis, or he started writing about the Trobriand islanders, he discovered that he did something which is unique, which is called participant observation. I will not discuss about participant observation here, but there he kind of understood that it is not possible to understand the culture of the other if you focus on one or two or three or four aspects of a society. Rather, you should be able to explore every part of the social reality, every part of a social system, as they are interlinked with each other. The very idea is there with Ratley Brown's theory of structural functionalism as well, when he says that there are different components of a society which are interlinked. So the way a culture, the way a society holds itself became more important after so much devotion of cultural change by the scholars of evolutionism. So this at that point of time was a fresh start, was a fresh beginning to see anthropology, to see society and culture, to see how society and culture holds itself rather than it changes. So in order to do that, they really had to have a holistic understanding of a society. Now, holism is also linked with Fra primarily because he was a cultural relativist. Now, when you take the approach of cultural relativism, which says that no culture is better than other, no culture, every part of the culture or every culture should be viewed in relative term to each other. So there is no hierarchy. The hierarchy about which actually the scholars of evolutionism concentrated a lot. So that has something to do with holism as well, because he was the first person, or maybe he was among the first anthropologists, who said that we should be able to understand culture as an integrated whole, as an integration of several components or several parts of a society. And he also devised the four-dimensional approach of anthropology, that is physical anthropology, archaeological anthropology, linguistic anthropology, and cultural or social anthropology. Now, holism eventually became a research strategy. Even today, when social anthropologists do field work, they have some kind of engagement with holism. It doesn't mean that a social anthropologist or a physical anthropologist or an archaeological anthropologist is always doing something holistic. It's not that. It's not always even possible. But they usually try to understand how different cultural components and how different other dimensions, even biological dimensions, are linked with each other. Let me give you an example from my own fieldwork. In 2007, we went to do a fieldwork in Manipur, that is in the northeastern India. Manipur is a very disturbed place. So we were supposed to evaluate for the government of India about the feasibility of distribution of an improved variety of pigs. The pigs which grows first, because there is a substantive demand of pork. And we were supposed to give those improved variety of piglets only to the poorest of the poor. So it is very difficult to identify who is poorest of the poor, because the entire Manipur seems to be very poor. There are people who cannot even eat a proper meal a day. So when we started doing field work, we found out it's very difficult. Then we wrote to the ministry, but they were insisting that we should give it to the poorest of the poor. Then there were certain NGOs who works with the development areas, and they identified the poorest of the poor based on certain criteria. And we said that there should, if a person is participating, if a person is taking the piglets, then he or she is not supposed to give it to others. In that way, over the years, he can accumulate a substantive amount of money from his pigs. so that he can reinvest it and so that he can come out of the poverty trap or come out of the extreme form of poverty. So we came back. Then after a few years, not a few years, maybe after a year or two, another request from the Ministry of Health. The earlier work was linked to the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Ministry of Health came, and they were reported that in those areas where these elephant pigs were distributed, there is a high amount of child malnutrition and undernutrition. So again, IIM Calcutta was tasked with to evaluate that, and during that evaluation, something very interesting came up. It appeared that those tribal families where those NGOs actually distributed the improved variety of piglets, they have crossed the poverty trap as expected. But when they started earning money from the pigs, there were certain rapid changes happening in their society because they had certain amount of cash and they stopped cultivating certain kind of wild maize which used to which used to be used as fodder for the cows and the goats. So because of the easy availability of the fodders which was not there, they sold off all their livestock which used to yield milk. Now when those were sold off, the children, they deprived of the milk. So that was one of the major reasons why this malnutrition or undernutrition came and struck there. So basically, the idea of distributing piglets was a novel one. But since this work did not include a proper assessment of the culture of the quote unquote others in its entirety, so the project ultimately failed to deliver what we call holistic development, right? So basically, in today's world, when anthropologists do field work, in a way or other, they are supposed to include holism in their own research design. So holism is not only about the 4 dimensions of anthropology, or anthropology is holistic not because it has 4 dimensions of studying human beings. Anthropology is not holistic in spirit primarily because it advocates a total understanding of society. Rather, it is holistic because the very practice of ethnography which is holistic. Now, if you do kind of participant observation, if you stay there, if you study the cultural dimensions of a given society from its entirety, you are doing nothing but holism. So if you again go back to the history of anthropology, you can see that holism has everything to do with American cultural anthropology. Now, American cultural anthropology advocated the study of human culture holistically. Now, if you kind of think about the definition of E.B. Tyler said that culture is a complex whole which includes everything that people do. So, holism is rooted from the very foundation of American anthropology or American cultural anthropology, which primarily advocates a rounded view of how culture affects individuals, how culture shapes individuals, how culture defines individuals, how culture creates individuals. So basically, when we study holism, we should stress on at least 3 principles. First of all, we should understand what holism is in anthropological sense, which should include 2 things, at least 2 things. One is the multidimensional aspects of anthropology, and the second one is the holistic spirit of cultural anthropology. Next, we should also concentrate holism as a research strategy. Just now I have given you an example from my own fieldwork that why holism should be there as a research strategy, and this also explains that participant observation long-term ethnography, etc., are extremely needed to understand the culture of the others, because culture itself shapes us, culture itself gives us, culture itself defines us, what we are. And finally, we should also give adequate emphasis on the functionalism, which is again holistic in spirit. So this is about holism. I would like you to visit my blog on holism. You can type it as humananthromaterials.blogspot.in slash 2012 slash 08 slash holism dash in dash anthropology.html. Thank you.